Hi everybody, let's take a look at some more political excess. Today it's another hypothetical 2024 presidential matchup. This time, let's do Amy Klobuchar for the Democrats. She is the U.S. Senator from Minnesota, up against Brian Kemp for the Republicans. He is the governor of Georgia. This is just for fun. I understand this matchup will not be happening, but let's play it out anyway. Safe states are over a 10-point margin, likely 5 to 10 points, lean under 5 points, and tilt 1 point or less. So how do I see this matchup going? Well, I don't particularly think either of these candidates really have that much of a magnetic personality. My own view is Brian Kemp is going to be off-putting to many parts of the country. He'll do well in the South, but his appeal, I think, is rather limited. Amy Klobuchar, I think her appeal is also limited. I think she would have been much better suited running 10 years ago, and probably more so as a vice presidential candidate. I know she did run for president in 2020. She didn't do horribly, but she really didn't get much going. I think her personality is going to be suited for the suburbs. A lot of women are going to come out for her. That's where I think Brian Kemp is going to falter. But again, I don't think there's going to be overwhelming enthusiasm for either of these candidates. There's not going to be a lot of crossover appeal. And I do think turnout would be generally down. But again, it all comes down to the issues, what their platforms are, the national environment at the time. Having said all that, let's get started and start in Alaska. That will go safe for Brian Kemp. It's a moderately red state, and I don't think Kemp would do worse than Trump did, who won it by 10 points himself. Hawaii, extremely safe for Amy Klobuchar. Let's go west coast to east, and we'll start Washington, Oregon, California. Those will all be safe for Klobuchar. Brian Kemp is going to have very limited appeal on the coasts. At least that's how I see it playing out. But we can go on to Nevada, and this was a tough call for me. I really don't see Amy Klobuchar really appealing to these voters here, and I also don't see them appealing really much to Brian Kemp. The state probably is trending slightly toward the right, and my guess is the blue-collar voters would slightly want to come out more for Brian Kemp, and he would win this by a tilt. But it definitely could go either way. Idaho, Utah, safe for Kemp. Arizona, this will be a lean for Amy Klobuchar. I think Arizona is probably trending toward the left. Amy Klobuchar, she's basically non-threatening enough to be able to win by a couple of points in Arizona. Montana and Wyoming, safe for Kemp. Colorado, safe for Klobuchar. New Mexico, that'll be likely for Klobuchar. Again, I don't think a lot of these voters are going to think either of these candidates are what they're necessarily looking for, but given the lean of the state, Klobuchar would win that by at least 5 points, could get up to high single digits. North Dakota, South Dakota, safe for Kemp. Nebraska at large, safe for Kemp. In the 2nd District, that has Omaha. It did get a lot redder after redistricting. However, it's very suburban, and I think Amy Klobuchar would do well there. I'm going to say she wins that by a likely margin, probably just over 5 points, maybe 6. Sharice Davids, the U.S. representative from there, she was able to win very comfortably after redistricting as well, so I don't think Brian Kemp would really have too much of a chance in this district. Kansas and Oklahoma, safe for Kemp. How about in Texas? That will be a likely for Brian Kemp. Now, Brian Kemp is from the South. He's from Georgia. He has the accent. That might actually give him a little bit more appeal in some places in Texas. The turnout might go up in some of these redder counties. The suburbs would come out for Amy Klobuchar. I would imagine she'd win Williamson County, Houston suburbs, Dallas suburbs. But I still think Brian Kemp overall would win that by at least 5 points. Let's go up to Minnesota. This is where Amy Klobuchar is from. She would, of course, win that by a safe margin. In her 3 U.S. Senate bids, she's won those very comfortably. I don't think she would win by 20 points, but I think it would be over 10 points, maybe up to 15. Let's go to Iowa. That will be likely for Brian Kemp. Iowa does border Minnesota. Maybe that helps Klobuchar on the margins there. I don't necessarily think people in Iowa are going to be excited to vote for Kemp, but he would still win that probably by mid to high single digits. Missouri, safe for Kemp. Arkansas, safe for Kemp. Louisiana, also safe for Kemp. Let's go up to Wisconsin. This will be a lean for Amy Klobuchar. Obviously, Wisconsin borders Minnesota. The proximity and geography of those states probably helps Klobuchar a little bit. But at the same time, I think Brian Kemp, he's not really going to appeal in a lot of the suburbs here at all. He's not going to get any support in the blue counties, Dane or Milwaukee. And I think a lot of the driftless area would come out and actually support Amy Klobuchar. So she would probably win this relatively comfortably. 2 or 3 points. It could even get up to 4, 5, or 6. Illinois, safe for Klobuchar. Michigan, That I have as a lean for Klobuchar. This would be actually fairly close to a likely, but it is hard to say with a lot of confidence given I don't know exactly what these candidates would be running on. Maybe Brian Kemp does stronger here in the upper Midwest than I think, but I'm giving this to Klobuchar by mid-single digits. Indiana, safe for Kemp. Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, safe for Kemp. How about in Florida? That I have as a lean for Kemp. We'll have to wait just and see how much this state actually trends to the right on a presidential level. But Kemp is from a neighboring state. Even though I don't think he's really all that appealing personality-wise, he'd be able to win Florida by at least 2 or 3 points, maybe even 4 or 5. How about in Georgia? Brian Kemp's home state. This was a tough call. I had this just over a likely margin for him, probably 5.5 points. Even though that's his home state, at this point, I don't think he would win that by over 10 or anything. He would win it relatively comfortably, and it's just over a likely margin. South Carolina, that'll be safe for Kemp. North Carolina, again, Brian Kemp being from the South probably helps him a little bit in a state like North Carolina. I have it as a lean for Kemp, but this would be close to a likely. How about up in Ohio? This will be a likely for Brian Kemp. I think the state has trended just too far to the right for a Democrat to actually be competitive here in the vast majority of situations, so Kemp would win that by over 5 points. West Virginia, that is going to definitely be safe for Brian Kemp. Culturally, that state has backed very, very far away from the Democrats. Even though it was only a couple decades ago, it was a reliably blue state. Let's go up to Maine at large. This I have as a safe for Klobuchar, just over 10 points. In the first district, that'll be very safe, but in the second district, that will be likely for Brian Kemp. I don't think he's as strong as someone like Trump, who won this by double digits, but he would still win it by over 5. How about New Hampshire? That will be a likely for Amy Klobuchar. I think her kind of personality would work in a state like New Hampshire much more than Brian Kemp's would, and she would win that by over 5 points. Vermont, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Washington, D.C., all safe for Amy Klobuchar. Those are blue states, and that's not going to be changing with Brian Kemp on the ballot. Let's take a look at Pennsylvania. Well, if Wisconsin went blue, Michigan went blue, Pennsylvania is going to go blue, and that will be a lean for Amy Klobuchar. It's borderline likely, similar to Michigan. I don't think Brian Kemp would really have enough appeal in Pittsburgh and the Philadelphia suburbs. He'd probably do fairly well in the red Trump counties. He would have a moderate amount of working class appeal, especially on the cultural issues. I don't think it would be enough to outweigh what Klobuchar would do. And finally, the last state is Virginia, and that will be a likely for Klobuchar. And that is my map, and that would result in 257 electoral votes for Brian Kemp, 281 for Amy Klobuchar, and Klobuchar would actually win this election. It would be close, at least electorally, but I think she would have a little bit of room to spare, because I don't think Brian Kemp would actually be able to win this election. Even if I give him the benefit of the doubt in some of these borderline states, I just don't think national politics are in his future. He did burn some bridges with Donald Trump. However, I don't know how much staying power that's going to have. And again, Amy Klobuchar ran for president. She didn't really do a whole lot. I don't think that would hurt her too much going forward. I think the main thing is turnout would probably be down here because they just don't have these inspirational type of personalities, at least in my opinion. Klobuchar comes off as a little bit nervous, a little bit inauthentic, a little bit consultant tested. And Brian Kemp, he kind of just comes off as somebody from the South who's really not going to have much appeal beyond the South. Even his accent would probably do him a little bit of damage at this point. But having said all that, I still think Klobuchar would win this. It's not a great matchup, but that's what I think would happen. What do you think would happen? Let me know in the comments. Do you mostly agree with this map? Do you disagree with 2, 3, 5, 6 of these states? That's fine. Let me know down below. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.